We come to the last and most concrete part of this class, and the situation here involves a polynomial ring in one variable over an arbitrary commutative ring R. Here I am able to do long division by any monic polynomial, and this fact, along with its important consequence, the factor theorem, are going to be very important tools for us, especially in the case where the ground ring is a field. So let's see the precise statement. I am given two polynomials g and d. G is arbitrary and d has leading coefficient 1. I would like to be able to divide g by d to get the quotient polynomial q and the remainder polynomial r, leading to this familiar equation. Of course, I want to require the remainder to be somehow less than what I am dividing by. Since these are polynomials, what I require is that the degree of r should be strictly less than the degree of d. Of course, I remember that the zero polynomial, which is the smallest polynomial, does not have a degree. And so I have to introduce that as a separate possibility over here. An important possibility, because when r is 0, that means that d is a factor of g. So from high school you should remember that existence of q and r can actually be shown by concrete construction. Formally, you can do induction on the degree of g. So please try to do a proof now, and also try to see whether you can relax this requirement that d should be a monic polynomial. Let's start by proving the base case where g is either 0 or has degree less than d. There is no work to do over here because I can take the remainder itself to be g and the quotient to be 0. Proceeding, now I have the situation where the degree k of g is at least as much as the degree L of d. In this case, I observe the following. If I multiply d by a times x to the k minus L, then the resulting product has the same leading term as g. So if I subtract this product from g, then the leading term cancels out and I get something that has degree less than k. So now I can use induction on the degree of g and write this difference as d times q plus r, where r is less than d in this fashion. But now I'm really done because I simply have to take this term to the other side, take d as a common factor to get the desired quotient, and the remainder stays the same. In this procedure, in order to cancel this leading term, it was important that the leading coefficient here was 1. If this is not the case, then it can create problems. To show this, I have given an example over integers. I am dividing this polynomial by 2x minus 5, and all the coefficients here are divisible by 2. But that's not enough. I can get started and write the first term as of the quotient as 3x square to cancel out this 6x cube. But after multiplying all of this, I am left with the next leading term 11x square, which I can no longer divide by 2x because 11 is not divisible by 2. You can also make this into a proof that long division is not possible over here. But if I am willing to work with rational coefficients, then there is no problem in continuing from here because now half is available to me. So I can use this idea to slightly generalize long division as follows. I no longer require d to have leading coefficient 1, but long division will still work if the leading coefficient of d is now a unit in the ground ring. The proof of this is easy. I simply adjust by the inverse of this unit as I have written over here. So this may look like a tiny extension, and it is, but it is important because when the ground ring is a field, in that case, every non-zero element is a unit. And so if I take the polynomial ring fx, then now I can do long division by every non-zero polynomial. So this case is going to be supremely important for us throughout the course. A quick comment. While talking about long division, I may have said the quotient, the remainder. So are these unique? And the answer is for polynomial long division, they are. The way one sets up this argument is by assuming two expressions dq plus r and dq1 plus r1 and showing that q must equal q1 and likewise for r. Two properties are key here. One is that if I add two polynomials, then the degree of the result is at most equal to the larger of the degrees. Second, if I multiply a monic polynomial with a non-zero polynomial, then the degrees add. I have written out the details over here, which you can check for yourself. I should remark that uniqueness is not nearly as important as existence of quotient and remainder. For example, for integer long division, if I formulate the requirement that the remainder be smaller than d in terms of absolute values, then in general quotient and remainder are not unique, as you should check. Even then, and even with this version, one would be able to prove all the properties that you did in homework 0. I have incorporated the uniqueness in the statement of long division here. After all this work, I am ready to simply pick up the remainder and factor theorems. The argument nicely combines long division together with substitution. So the statement is familiar, but now we are saying that it is true over an arbitrary commutative ring R. I am given a polynomial g of x and I am dividing it by the linear polynomial x minus a to get quotient q and remainder r, which must be a constant because this is a linear polynomial. The statement is that this constant is equal to g of a. Suggested by this, I apply the evaluation at a homomorphism to this long division equation. On the left hand side, I get g of a, and on the right hand side, the first term simply goes away because of the factor 0 here, giving me g of a is equal to r as claimed. For the factor theorem, note that x minus a dividing g of x is exactly the same as saying that the remainder r is 0. But the remainder is precisely g of a as we saw earlier, and this gives me the factor theorem. Both of these theorems, especially the factor theorem, is going to be very important for us. I have given you a problem here, a nice exercise that uses some of these ideas, and it's also quite fundamental. So please do this exercise properly right now. Okay, so let's do this. The bound on the number of roots holds precisely when R is an integral domain. And the solution uses factor theorem again along with substitution. So if you were not able to do this problem, please try to do this now since you are given the final answer. Okay, so when R is not a domain, I need a counterexample, and for that I take non-zero elements A and B of the ground ring such that AB is 0. Now if I take the linear polynomial AX that has two distinct roots at least, namely 0 and B. If I have an integral domain R, then I do induction on the degree of G. If the degree is 0, then G is a non-zero constant and it has no roots. For higher degrees, let us suppose that there is a root A. If there is no root, then again there is nothing to prove. If I take the root A, then by the factor theorem, x minus a comes out as a factor of g of x with quotient q of x. Now here comes the key point. If I take any other root of g, let's call it b, and substitute it in this equation. So what do I get? I get g of b, which is supposed to be 0, but on the right hand side I get product of two terms and b minus a is non-zero. Since I'm in an integral domain, that tells me that q of b must be 0. So what's the upshot? All roots of g other than a must be roots of q of x. Now q of x has degree 1 less than g, and therefore by induction it has at most n minus 1 roots, and so therefore g, its distinct roots are going to be the roots of q along with a, and so therefore g has at most n roots, which is what we wanted to prove. Okay, so please note that this argument also gives me the following. If I list the distinct roots of g, then g of x must be divisible by the product of x minus ai. This statement is not true if R is not an integral domain, and you should be able to find a counterexample. For example, you can use again the similar idea as here. Let's finish the lecture by looking ahead a little bit. We defined a polynomial as a finite formal sum involving non-negative powers of x. So let's see if we can modify this idea. We could try to allow negative powers of x also, or we could allow infinite formal sums, or both. See if you can get any new rings this way, and whatever you find, add it to your zoo of examples. The second task is much more important at this stage. A ring homomorphism is in particular a homomorphism of additive abelian groups. Therefore, it will have a kernel. By definition, that is the set of all elements in the source that are mapped to 0 in the target by the homomorphism. This is going to be a subgroup of R under addition. In the example, I have asked you to find explicitly, as much as possible, the kernel of two ring homomorphisms. The first one is evaluation at a given constant C in R of a polynomial, and the second map takes any polynomial to the function that it defines on R. The second example will be useful in showing that any real polynomial can be uniquely recovered from the function that it defines, as we said earlier. Kernels of homomorphisms, as in the case of groups and vector spaces, are going to be absolutely critical to our study. We will see that kernels are not just subgroups, but something called ideals. We will define ideals in the next class and talk about ideals at great length throughout the course. So please try to read what the definition of an ideal is, try to show that the kernel of a homomorphism forms an ideal, and in your zoo of examples, try to find as many ideals as you can. This is going to be very useful for future.